Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle, and I am your host, Chris Angle. The purpose of the Philosophical Angle is to define concepts in current media. I am the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Nature of Aesthetics, and these books are available free for viewing online at www.philosophypublishing.com. They are also available free upon request as an attachment to an email that you can get at the website. Along with me is my panelist, Rick Samuelson. Rick graduated from Yale, has an MBA from Tufts, another MBA from Wharton, and he's an independent investor in the venture capital business. The purpose of the Philosophical Angle is to examine the nature of concepts being used in current media and compare and contrast their essence with the usage and circumstances in which they're being used. So, this week, let's get to it. Recently in the news, we have immigration reform. There's a bill going through Congress, passed the Senate, on the way to the House of Representatives for discussion there. And let's parse the ingredients to find out. As for Nancy Pelosi's purposes, we'll find out what's in it. Okay, first, and we have a downplay in the bill of the family reunification. That program is being curtailed. Emphasis is going toward increasing the brain visas that the U.S. needs for that the companies in the U.S. need for their PhDs and other intellectually astute people that they require for their research and development in all the high knowledge, high-tech industries that are here in the United States. Recently, or up until now, only about 60,000 visas per year are available. And when they become available each year, they are usually spoken for within a couple of hours of the opening. This obviously is a tremendous need to increase this, and the bill addresses this, which is great. There's also a guest worker program. Has a program for the farmers in the nation who need to have temporary workers come in and help them out. So there are temporary visas that would allow their needs to be covered. Obviously a great program. 2 ingredients of the immigration reform that are well needed. However, there's some other things that are happening. I don't know whether this is good or bad, but we'll discuss this a little bit later. There's basically a path to citizenship for illegals, basically an amnesty program. How many will this involve? It's anybody's guess, but I've seen estimates anywhere from 11 million to 30 million of illegals here in the nation that would be subject to this amnesty program and a path to citizenship. Border security. Well, there's a fence being talked about. But in this bill, of the 1,900 miles along the Mexican border with the U.S., this fence only covers about 700 miles that's being written about inside this bill. A little bit more than 1/3. I don't know how effective that would be. Just go around it, I guess. Plus, although it's I guess a high-tech fence, Janet Napolitano of the Homeland Security says that she'll need to have some approval from the head of Homeland Security in order for the for the fence to go forward. Environmentalists may object. Perhaps there's a turtle somewhere that crosses from the U.S. to the Mexican side frequently, and if this fence were to impact these turtle travels, or whatever other animal may be passing to and fro, the environmentalists may object, and this will hold up the fence. Also, this fence will not be able to go through tribal lands. So if there are any Indian reservations that are on the border, this fence will not be able to be constructed in that area. With these objections, probably the fence will never be built. And fences like this have been discussed before. I think there have been authorizations to build a fence previously, and they've never been built, at least not to have any effect. So, overall, is this thing good or bad? Well, the path to amnesty, the path to citizenship. There's a welfare potential, but probably not. Probably many of these illegals already have jobs. So I'm not sure that there was too much danger of the present illegals going on to any welfare and incurring too much more anyway. However, this border security is a problem. If the fence never gets built, or even if the 700 miles of the fence gets built out of the only 1/3 of the whole border, there's a negative result, clearly a dangerous result. There's no security against the drug cartels, against drugs themselves coming across. We know that we've imported gangs from Central America and from Mexico, and there's really no security against terrorists coming across the border. It's open. It's a clear way to do this, and this has been written about in novels already. The one Jack Clancy movie, a Clancy novel, has already depicted a scenario regarding the drug cartels along with terrorists coming across the southern border. It's pretty frightening. And of course, security is the primary job of government. And most likely it'll be ignored here. But there are some good benefits. Emphasis going from family reunification to increasing the brain visas and a guest worker program. These are obvious goods that America would benefit and increase the U.S. productivity. But increasing U.S. productivity compared with the security aspects of the fence, or should I say lack of, compared to the number of illegals that will be coming aboard. Good or bad? But I think the main seesaw here that we have to weigh is the security versus the U.S. productivity that this bill enables. So to discuss this, let's bring in Rick and see what he has to say, and we'll continue the conversation there. So Rick, what do you think? What do you think about this immigration reform that's wending its way through Congress presently? Any thoughts on this matter?
Well, the scary thing about the Senate version is that it's all things for all interest groups in nature, and in order to satisfy all these interest groups, the net result is the overall level of immigration would increase dramatically, double in fact, over a 10-year period. So right now we're taking in roughly $1 million a year. It would go up to roughly $2 million per year. Your point about H-1B visas, these are highly skilled workers, is correct. That would be about 200,000 per year, about 10% of the total. So the unfortunate part of the Senate bill is that it has some useful elements as far as actually promoting economic growth and increasing, most specifically, the H-1B visa element of it, but the other parts of the bill are, raise enormous concerns. It's not obvious that the United States can absorb this many low-skilled workers. We certainly have chronically high unemployment today. The government's GDP projections, whether it's the Congressional Budget Office or the White House, have consistently been downgraded numerous times since the Obama presidency began. And so their forecasts for the next several years are highly doubtful. And in fact, I would say on balance that growth, which was just downgraded again to 1.4% for the first quarter, is going to be lower than expectation. And therefore, any of the assumptions baked into how many workers the U.S. can absorb are really highly, highly doubtful. And more remarkable still is that it's a kind of cart before the horse approach. In other words, normally an economy achieves rapid growth, and then they open up the labor market for more workers in order to control wage growth and inflation. We're doing exactly the opposite. Under the assumption, it seems, that just the presence of more unskilled or low-skilled people will somehow grow the economy. Yet, there's certainly no evidence for that empirically. The form of the bill that the House of Representatives seems to be evolving will probably be more piecemeal. In other words, they'll have a separate bill for highly skilled workers. They'll have a separate bill for naturalizing the illegals to the extent that they do. To me, that makes a lot more sense. I worry that the Senate immigration bill, it has the same sort of malodorous quality that the healthcare bill had. In other words, in trying to please everyone, you create a monstrosity that can't be implemented properly and is ineffective at the end of the day.
Okay, some really good thoughts there. You mentioned in your opening remarks that there'll be 1 million people increases to 2 million. Were you referring to immigration?
Yeah, overall immigration.
Overall? Okay.
Yeah.
That's legal or illegal you're talking about?
That's legal.
So the bill would draw in would enlarge the program from 1 million to 2 million, legal.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay.
Roughly.
And of which 200,000 would be the what I call the brain visas.
Yes, actually a very small percentage.
Right. And then, so then there's a balance between the unemployment you discussed and versus new workers. And you're pitting the normal scenario of the economy growing first, needing workers, and now we're just saying we're putting in new workers, and this will provide the stimulus. I guess the stimulus that they're talking about is that they're low-wage people, so the workforce would become more efficient in the sense that you have lower-wage people available for your economy. but wouldn't this drag down the level of wages overall? What do you think? Do you
Well, yeah, but we have plenty of unemployed, low-skilled people already. We have millions, actually, available. Why aren't they being absorbed right now?
Okay, good point. So we
And
don't
they
need
speak
this.
English, most of them.
So really, the core of the problem I see here is twofold. One, we have to grow the economy, and then that will naturally increase the demand for workers. And the second problem here is, and I'd like to touch on this with you, is the security aspect of not going ahead with closing the southern border. What do you think? Is this a viable concern that we should have regarding this bill and the past bills and really the future of the security of the United States? Is it at jeopardy here with not closing the border?
Well, I think in terms of security, you can never be 100% secure. What the U.S. has achieved to date through their surveillance programs and general surveillance is actually quite remarkable. Many plots to blow up things and kill people have been foiled, and they don't probably get as much media coverage as they should. You only hear about the ones like the Boston massacre in any kind of detail because of the nature of the process. Namely, you don't want to scare the public with the details on these kinds of things or alarm them overly. But the fact that the government, that there are so many plots that the government has to deal with, should, I think, raise some alarms. And if you're opening up your border to yet more immigration and not really able to secure it completely, surely, the odds are that you're increasing your risk.
Right, and I agree with that. So overall, what do you think of this bill? Should it be passed as it is, or should the House vote for it or against it, or what should the House do? I was thinking the other day that actually a good approach for the House to do would be to dismantle this bill into its separate components and make each its individual law. One for the feds, one for the guest worker visas, one for the brain visas, and the other pieces. What do you think? What should the House do with this bill?
Absolutely, that has to be the approach. That's the only sensible approach. And starting with all of the elements of immigration that promote growth. So the obvious place to start is not with naturalizing illegals, which I find ethically challenging, to say the least, but with increasing the number of H-1B visas. I mean, let's start there. We want growth. We want to develop businesses. We want more startups. So let's start with that. The future of the United States does not lie with digging ditches more effectively. It lies with high tech. We are a high labor cost, capital-intensive economy. That's where we are. We're not going to go back to becoming driven by principally the farming sector. That is not going to happen. That's not where growth in productivity will come from in a significant sense. So, the sooner we embrace, a more pro-growth, growth first, immigration later, enlarged immigration, I mean, the better it will help the economy.
Well, I think it was well said, and I agree with it completely because as you said previously, the economy is the key to demanding more workers, but the key to growing the economy is, of course, in the high-tech industry. In other words, knowledge. And knowledge is that which will the creation of knowledge by high-tech, innovative people is what's going to make everything run more efficient, and it's the nature of our developing economy over the past, since inception, since the Industrial Revolution. That is, the greater amount of knowledge being produced by innovators is what makes us be able to produce more with less, and supply more good for the economy. So I
don't want to over-egg this. I look at a lot of startup companies, and I read a lot of business plans. And I would say that of the startups I've looked at, and say the 50 latest ones I've looked at, probably about 85% are started by native-born Americans, and maybe 10 to 15% from immigrants, usually immigrants from India, as a matter of fact. So the growth boost you get is at the margin. The productivity growth in the United States is overwhelmingly still driven by native-born Americans. So the H-1B visa contribution is at the margin, but the point still remains. At the margin, it does help.
Okay. Well, it's companies that are demanding them, and those companies are the ones that put out product, whether goods or services. So obviously they must have a benefit if there's a demand for them, a clear demand for it, as supply.
Quite honestly, that's the way immigration works. Or work visas work in other countries. Go to Japan. A business will apply to the Japanese government and indicate that they have a specific need for a specific type of foreign worker. The government reviews it, and they say, usually say, okay, fine. So, you get a visa to work there. That doesn't mean you necessarily will become a citizen. I mean, there's the potential for that, but in most cases, there's no assumption that you're going to become a citizen. But it is a business-driven transaction. It's not, a group of individuals applying to come to the country and then somehow find a job later.
Okay. All right. So now let's go back to the bill itself as it sits in its entirety at the doorstep of the House. If the House were not to take out the individual parts and had to give it a yes or no as it stands, weighing the security aspects with the economy as it is, just sitting there, would you recommend your representative for a yay or a nay on this as it stands?
I think it's as bad a bill as the health care bill. I'll just put it that way.
Whoa, there is a tremendous negative opinion. Okay. I agree too. I think overall that the security aspects far detract from the bill to the extent that it really outweighs the beneficial aspects of the immigration programs that it puts forth. So overall, as it stands, it's a no-go. I think here with you, Rick, and with me, and hopefully with the House of Representatives, unless they can do a individual approach and be able to work that out with the Senate. Any final remarks? So we've got here just a minute or two. I'd like to have to go back to that economy issue on the economy, and the fact that knowledge grows the economy. And you mentioned that 85% of your businesses that you look at are being started by Americans, born here and raised and got their education here. of the ones that you've looked at, that how many involve high tech? How many involve superior knowledge or an innovation of superior knowledge in some aspect or another?
Well, in this part of the country, it being the Pacific Northwest, the overwhelming majority of the enterprises are tech-related or technical in nature, in that they require some sort of intellectual property to be successful. So I would say those that are not, that don't have an intellectual property component might be 5 to 10% of the total.
Did you say that 5 to 10% are the ones that don't have an intellectual property value?
Yeah, yeah.
So really, the majority of it, close to 90%, is something that has a superior knowledge component that's going to allow it to propel itself forward into becoming successful in the future. Is that correct?
Yeah, or it's assembling a new kind of technology or service offering in a way that's new. For example, one company that comes to mind is a battery charging installer that is presently installing units to charge electrical vehicles all across mainly California at hotels and companies and schools and so forth. It's offering a new service that's technical in nature, and they are assembling it in a way and have offered it in a kind of packaged form such that there's a lot of value added, and it's not something that your average Joe can do.
Okay. Rick, I want to thank you for joining us here on the Philosophical Angle. And that's another episode, and we'll see you next week. Thanks very much.
Thank you.